Well, the events of last night brought the curtain down on 47 years of EU membership that began when Britain voted to join the common market in 1973.
The country has undergone significant change since then, some of which has been imported from our European neighbours. Our correspondent Martha Kellner reports now on the impact Europe has had on British culture.
This is Britain in the early 1970s. A time of industrial unrest and trade union standoffs. When petrol shortages briefly ground us to a halt. An era when glam rock ruled the charts. There were only 3 television channels, and fish and chips was the takeaway of choice. That's what I hear anyway. I wasn't around in 1973 when Britain joined the common market, strengthening our bond with the continent. That relationship will endure beyond our exit from the EU. But now is a good time to consider how Europe has changed the way we live, from the clothes we wear to the food we eat and how we spend our time. And what better place to start than with the national game? This match at Wembley celebrated our arrival in the common market, a team captained by Bobby Charlton representing the home nations.
Ball to Charlton, a perfect cross to Jensen, a goal.
They faced a side representing the 6 existing common market countries. It was victory for Charlton's men, and 5 years later a European decree gave footballers the freedom to play anywhere. At Brentford FC, the influx of European players started later. Their Griffin Park ground in West London is a symbol of traditional English football. A trip to the pub is all part of the game for Jerry and his mates. The same could have been said for the players. That was before European coaches arrived in the top flight, bringing some continental discipline with them.
Probably the biggest influence on that is probably Arsene Wenger. Because there's a guy who's done like sports and science, and he's saying to him, you're eating totally the wrong food. So all the Arsenal players just changed the way they trained, the way they ate. And then them Arsenal players were going into England camps, and all the United and Liverpool players were looking at them thinking, what's he doing? And all the questions are going. And then suddenly, they're now going back to their own clubs going, well, Arsenal, they're doing this, and they can run like loons for 90 minutes rather than 75.
It wasn't just the town's football clubs, the high street was changing too.
It has made a big difference. I remember going to camps when you were young, and it was always miserable. They close at 5. Yeah, greasy spoons, yeah, the food was rubbish. But as soon as you got to 5 o'clock, that'd just be that, you're out the door. Whereas now, even I just live up the road in Norfolk. There's creperies, there's 2 or 3 Italian restaurants. Whatever food you want is just on my local high street. It's incredible. And I make the most of it, as you can probably tell.
By the mid-1990s, some of the biggest names in British football were from the continent. Eric Cantona with his mix of French arrogance and extraordinary skill. Gianfranco Zola and Gianluca Vialli bringing an Italian flair, and the ingenuity of Germany's Jurgen Klinsmann.
It's going to be a totally new experience for me here in England.
But it wasn't just the Europeans coming over here. The first away trips to Europe were often a window to a new world for travelling fans. Anthony Teasdale among them.
If you've grown up in Salford or Kirkby or Leeds, then you've got the factory, you've got terraced houses and not much else, but suddenly you're in Switzerland and there's people drinking very small beers that are very cold and dressing in leisure wear with crocodiles on it, and trainers with Velcro straps. And this is another world. This is a world of Mediterranean tennis clubs and skiing, and it's just incredibly pleasant. And what it did, it gave young men tend to look for adventure, and this, in the late 70s and early 80s, was the passport to adventure.
Where football fans went first, others quickly followed. The birth of low-cost airlines meant the advent of the European weekend break. For some young people, this was a cheap ticket to foreign hedonism, returning with their eyes opened.
We imported the Ibethan way of clubbing into the UK. So it started in London and then Manchester, which was that you were being exposed to strange things. men kissing, transvestites, people who sort of ate fire for a living in Tarzan thongs. And that you could experience all that in an Ibiza nightclub. An Ibiza nightclub with no roof.
It wasn't just an appetite for European partying, but their food too.
When you are being exposed to foreign cuisine, let's say, you know, you get a taste for it, you know. 1972, if you wanted Italian food, you had to make do with spaghetti hoops on toast.
Well, that's a start towards the evening meal.
This used to be the epitome of haute cuisine.
Oh, Mum, that looks super.
And at the oldest delicatessen in Scotland, Francesca Contini and her parents used to be the tastemakers. That changed as European travel became cheaper and easier.
For many years, you know, we've been trying to tempt people and let them try things and let them taste and enjoy things and explain how you cook them. But now the reverse is happening and people are coming to us. Have you got X, Y, and Z? Because they've either travelled and, you know, tried it in Calabria and now they want to see if they can get it in Scotland. We used to sell Prosecco in the 80s. We introduced it in Scotland and not a lot of places sold it. Nobody knew what it was. You know, we'd go through, you know, a couple of cases a year. And now, of course, Prosecco is the drink of the nation.
As Europe has become more familiar, its exoticism has dissolved. Some reflect wistfully on the pre-Europe years as a time of simplicity. Others disagree.
There's nothing innocent about living in England in the post-industrial period after the war. It's a tough period. It was violent, more violent than today, certainly. And having to eat not great food and missing out on great music and nice experiences isn't something to me of a golden age. England was known as the sick man of Europe for a reason. It doesn't mean it was all bad, but I think the more culture that we are exposed to, the better.
Whether you wanted to leave Europe or not, the influence the continent has had on our everyday lives is inescapable and probably irreversible. From the food we eat to the clothes we wear and how we spend our time. Exit from the EU doesn't mean rewinding 47 years. This is Britain 2020. Martha Kellner, Sky News.
Very interesting piece. Should we see what's happening with the weather for you?